Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome back to another episode of Manders Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo. And today's episode is an episode that I originally planned to release for my episode 100. But I decided it wasn't the fit that I was looking for episode 100. But I did still want to release this episode. A dear friend of mine, Brandon Raino, sat down and role for reversed. He interviewed me on my podcast, and we delved down a little bit of our history, some of my own journey, and what has led me to Amanda's Mindset. I also thought the end of the year is a really great time for me to share this episode with y'all. And Brandon is such a true, genuine friend of mine, and I'm going to give y'all a little bit of insight. He's not a podcast host. He's not even someone who listens to podcasts regularly, doesn't even have the app on his phone, to give you an example. But when I told him I needed a favor and I wanted somebody close to me to interview me on my podcast, he's like, I got you. And that gives you a little insight as to the mindset behind Brandon and I's relationship. He's always had my back. I've always had his back. And even if he knows nothing about podcasting or how to host a podcast, if his best friend says to him, hey, I need you to host a podcast and ask me questions for an hour, he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And he helped me out. So I hope you enjoy seeing the side of Manders and the side of my mindset. Hope you enjoy this. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show. Follow along. You'll be notified whenever we release a new episode. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking of it. Leave a review. Let me know in Apple Podcasts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And now we're going to see how Brandon will shift your mindset by interviewing me on Manders Mindset. Now let's get into the episode.
Hello, and welcome to Manders Mindset. I'm Brandon Raino, and I'm going to be the host today for the 100th episode. We're talking to the actual host, Miss Amanda, and we're going to dive into her and get her talking more and answering questions for us. Well, hello, and thanks for having me on this 100th episode. Wild.
Thank you for being here.
Is it weird having someone else ask you questions instead of you asking them?
No, because I did this once before.
All right. I think start off easy. Obviously, this is the 100th episode. I'm sure you've answered this on here in the past of like what got you into and what got you wanting to start podcasting in general.
Honestly, I had never thought about it for the longest time. It wasn't something I even considered like in my realm of possibilities, mainly because I didn't know people who had podcasts. So it was just like, oh, Mel Robbins has a podcast. Oh, Jay Shetty has a podcast. All these like famous people. But then I used to, and you've heard some of these, I would rant on different social media platforms, just sharing videos, talking about any and everything. God knows what.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was motivational. I don't know. Some people told me it was motivational. I have a few, and I don't even know what my purpose in hosting these were, but I have 2 or 3 old videos of me just talking about random topics on Instagram. One of them I like reviewed a Rachel Hollis's podcast and talked about like my takeaways from it. It was weird. Then fast forward, I went and got certified in breathwork, and I was a big talker there. I always have something to say, as you probably know by now. And so he made the comment towards the end of the training. He's like, man, you should start a podcast. And I was like, bet I'm going to start a podcast. I don't know the first thing about that or what the hell that means, but okay. And yeah, then next thing you know, I just started figuring out how to go from there, who I would want to interview on the podcast. I reached out to, I knew one person, my friend Sean, who had a podcast already. And I was like, hey, I'm planning on starting a podcast. I know nothing about this. I know I want it to be related to mindset. Afterward, he showed me like all the steps. And next thing you know, a month later, after getting certified in breathwork, I launched the podcast.
Hell yeah. Were there any like pitfalls that you weren't expecting with this startup, or was it easy? You just kind of flew right into it?
It was not easy at all. I ran into issues that I didn't even know like would be an issue. So if you are a podcaster, you'll know what I'm referring to by an RSS feed. But there's something called an RSS feed. Every podcast gets one RSS feed. How I somehow managed to do whatever I did when I first submitted Manders Mindset, I don't know. But I got 2 RSS feeds. Apple thought I was a fraud. Spotify published my podcast. So that first week, I had people messaging me, why can't I find the podcast on Apple? Why can't I find the podcast on Apple? And I couldn't figure out the issue. Luckily, I host on like a great platform, Buzzsprout, shout out. But I emailed them and I was like, I don't know what is happening. I published my podcast. I see it on Spotify. I'm looking at the settings. I have no idea what this is. And they like went in the back end and looked and they're like, you have 2 RSS feeds and Apple is stricter than Spotify. They don't think this is like authentic. And I was like, oh, gotcha. So they think I'm like, why would I have 2 fucking podcasts with the same name? I don't know. What I would be trying to achieve, I don't know. But that was like one random issue that not a lot of people dealt with. I didn't have issues in terms of finding people to speak to. That was pretty easy. Mainly also because when I first, okay, I'm going to start a podcast, I literally sat down with like pen and paper and was like, here are people I would interview. And just named people that I knew in my life, but like that I respected. So like that wasn't an issue for me. Editing at first was not fun. I didn't enjoy it. But again, found different tools over time to use and like you figure shit out as you go. So that's gotten better. I wasn't publishing video episodes like right away, mainly because I wasn't sure how do I edit this? It's editing different than the audio. And there's all these different freaking processes to that. But now I'm using Descript to edit, changed my fucking life. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But yeah, so that was some of like the struggles per se. A lot of it wasn't too bad though, again, because I had my friend Sean show me and literally like he showed me step by step and I still have the 2 pages of notes. So like I could look back and know like, because I'm a visual learner. If I see it done, I can do it. Once I see it done, I can do it 5,000 times. If I don't see it done.
That same problem. But hey, you got that all sorted out. And like you have teased on your social media, you have another one coming out, your breathwork podcast you were talking about. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what's your plans with that?
Trailer is out. First episode is out. New episodes will air every Friday. And it's called Breathwork Magic. Honestly, I wanted a separate platform and space to be able to share different stories of transformations from breathwork. But that's not what Amanda's Mindset's for. Because you might want to hear, not you, but like people in general might want to hear like stories of transformation, stories of mindset shifts, but you don't want to just hear about breathwork. Or maybe you simply want to hear about breathwork and you don't want to hear me rant on about words and health and all these other different shit that I talk about on here. So I wanted a place and a platform to be able to simply talk about benefits of breathwork. And, you know, I've interviewed some other facilitators and I'm even discovering through speaking to some of them, like some of the more powerful transformations that can happen with breathwork. Like I spoke to a woman who healed a 15-year eating disorder through breathwork. But I want to be able to share more of these transformations that happen through breathwork, but not necessarily everybody wants to hear about them. You know, so like I wanted a separate place to be able to share these 2 different things. It ties in to the mindset aspect, but it's also something separate.
Right. That makes sense. So I wanted to get a little deeper in and kind of talk about your experiences. Like the first one that came up when we were talking was your weight loss journey. What kicked that off? What got you started? Because I know you've been doing this for years at this point now.
Do it what for years?
Like your weight loss journey, you're big into the gym, like, changing probably how you were eating, how you were, your extracurriculars and all that nonsense to get into a healthier spot physically. Can you like talk about that a little bit, like how you got into that?
Do you remember me when I was fat?
That like I don't necessarily think we were like friends in high school, and it was like that kind of era, right?
I was still fat a little bit in college.
Because I know we like realistically.
I went to your house in 2017 when I was fat. I remember.
I don't remember a lot from 2017. I could barely remember last week, so maybe.
You don't remember 2017? We were in the basement.
2017 would have been my senior year of college.
You don't remember?
No, not really. Like, there's been a lot of times that we've hung out when I throw parties. That to say, oh yeah, I remember that one specific time that we were at a party at your house. No, not really.
You don't remember 2017? We hung out in 2017.
I'm sure we did.
You don't remember any of 2017?
I remember the year.
That
Yeah.
was one of the first times we hung out.
Wasn't the first time we hung out in like Connecticut,
When did we go to Connecticut?
Providence, or Rhode Island?
That was later.
I don't think so.
It was.
Mm-mm.
Yes, that was 2019. I remember. I know for a fact it was New Year's Eve of 2019 that we were in Providence.
Yeah, I'm
swear on my fucking life.
Yeah, that sounds right.
You want to know why I'll never forget?
Oh, Jesus.
They want to know?
If it's going on the podcast and you keep saying it like that, I don't think so. That's an after podcast conversation.
Brandon, we'll get deep. You don't want to get deep?
Not really. That's nonsense. So anyway, back to what you ignored and completely sidetracked from. Yeah, we were talking about like weight loss, getting stronger, working out. You moved into your fucking walk around with 17 liters of water on you at all times.
I have 2 bottles with me right now.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't have your freaking gallon jug.
I started using these instead because they're leak proof and I can like stick them in a bag. And 2 of these is actually about like 6 ounces more than one big one. Because 2 of these is 80 ounces. One of those big ones is 73.
Crazy.
Yeah. But weight loss. Let's backtrack. So growing up, I was overweight most of my life. Most of high school, I was overweight. My junior year of high school, I went to the doctor's for, I think it was just a physical, but I got on the scale and I was really close to 200 pounds. And I was like, this is not going to happen. I didn't care what I had to do to ensure 200 pounds wouldn't happen. Like literally, it didn't matter if it was unhealthy. It didn't matter what it took. I was not going to see 1 pound heavier. That being said, at the time, I was a vegetarian, so I already was eating a lot of carbs because I just didn't understand protein, nutrients. I was 17 at the time. So I was eating a lot more carbs. Well, I also knew, like, realistically, more carbs, it's more fattening, not great for me. I didn't know all the ins and outs, but this being my mindset, per se, I was like, okay, I don't want to restrict per se, but I'm just going to eat green vegetables and honeydew melon. That's what I'm going to, I don't know. And
the young mind and how to lose weight.
It was really interesting to the point where like I'd eat green beans 4 times a day. Like We always had green beans. We always had a honeydew melon. Like, sometimes there were 2 in the house because that's all I was fucking eating. And I did this for a few months. And honestly, I kind of even got away with it because I know I should have seen this as like the issue in plain sight, but I didn't. But anytime I'd be around family members or like dinner time, I'd eat something small, very minimal, but just something to be like, oh, she's eating it. And then it was always just blaming it on that, well, I don't eat meat, so I'm not going to eat that. And it was that easy, like, oh, I don't eat it, so that's why I'm not eating it. I started to lose weight. I also got a Planet Fitness membership, the $10 high school membership. I'd go at least an hour every single day. Only did cardio though, because I was terrified of the weight room. I was like, I'm going to hurt myself. I would use the treadmill and the elliptical, the UGG trainer, and that was it. I started to lose some weight, probably lost maybe 20, 30 pounds. I didn't check it directly, but about that. It was difficult, though, like, obviously, to maintain. This was closer towards the end of my junior year. Did this on and off a little bit for senior year, not as consistent. Then, obviously, college time comes around. I went to Rhode Island, went to Roger Williams. I was living on campus, didn't have my car. So I physically did not have the ability to be eating green beans and honeydew melon all day because I literally didn't have access to that. I'm like, oh, here's a dining hall and I get unlimited food. There's no fucking green beans. I'll never forget that first day. And I was like, I have been eating green beans for months and there is green beans nowhere. And I literally said to somebody at like that far main station, and I was like, is there somewhere I can get some green beans? And she was like, some days when we have specials, there might be green beans and they'll be at this far. And I was like, so it's only a special and it's like a once in a while thing. And she's like, yeah, maybe once a week. And I was like, so I'm okay. So I can't do that. So naturally I started eating again. I got involved in a relationship probably around January of when I started college and was a pretty toxic relationship, which I didn't see in the midst of things. One of our first dates, and I actually never share this on my podcast, I share this on other podcasts, but this is kind of like hindsight's 2020. But one of our first dates, I still was a vegetarian. Now I had been eating more food because I'm at the dining hall, but I was still a vegetarian. But I didn't have the nerves, the balls, the courage, whatever word I want to use, to tell this man that I didn't eat meat. So he made chicken and I just ate it. And I was deathly sick, like for a long time.
Yeah.
To the point where I still went to like my pediatrician at the time. I was only 18, didn't have a new doctor. So I called and I spoke to the nurse and I was like, I'm really concerned. I wasn't puking, but I felt sicker than I ever felt in my life for probably like 5 days. And I was like,
your body's just not used to the meat. That's what I've heard is something that like vegetarians, they have to slowly integrate meat back into the diet, which is wild.
yes. And I was blown away. I felt like this fatigue. I felt like I was going to be sick even though I wasn't. And I spoke to this nurse and she's like, did you change anything in your diet? And I was like, I started eating chicken, but that's it. And she's like, do you normally eat chicken? And I was like, I haven't had chicken in 5 years. Well, your body is shocked. And I said, but it was grilled chicken. She goes, your body was still shocked with the grilled chicken. And I was like, oh. Now, I still did not have the fucking courage to tell this man, by the way, I don't eat meat and I'm like really fucking sick eating this chicken. So I just started eating meat. My 5 years of being a vegetarian just went out the window because I didn't have the courage to speak up to this man.
A wild turn of events.
You didn't listen. I thought
I know. I had no idea about that. That's why I was going to ask how you, like, when you stop being a vegetarian, but that answers that question right there.
And everybody's like, oh, did you stop eating meat after that? Well, I didn't have the courage because now I ate meat with this man once and I'm like, he's going to wonder why I'm now a vegetarian. I can't explain that. So I'm just going to suffer. And I would literally just suffer. I eat meat with him. And then for the first couple of days, I was pretty sick at night. So I'd literally go back to my dorm room and just feel fucking nauseous for a couple hours. till I fell asleep, and that was my life for a couple of days because I didn't tell him.
Yeah.
And years later, I nonchalantly mentioned it, and something along the lines of like, when we first met, I was a vegetarian, and like, you're the reason I started eating meat. And he just goes, well, that's good.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
With all this, the change in that diet, did you just start eating it like, normal food again? Or did you go into like, okay, I'm working out, I'm eating meat now, like, let's look into this and see how this could help me get healthier?
So it was all toxic. So now when the weight loss started in high school, I was exercising at Planet Fitness, only doing cardio, mainly because I was afraid of weights. Why I was afraid of them, I don't know. I thought if I dropped something, I'd get more hurt. That was what my head had told me. Well, fast forward, go to college, meet the man, stop eating meat. He was there was a lot of things I missed out on. And I'm not pointing the finger or blaming. Granted, I did make the choice to not do whatever the things were. But there were a lot of things that like he wasn't into. He didn't want me doing. I didn't work out at all in college. I went to the college gym. I can count on one hand, and it's ironic too. I can count on one hand the amount of times I went to the college gym, and the amount of times were all before this man was my boyfriend. So, anyways, yeah, I started eating meat, but it was only because I didn't have the courage to tell this man that I didn't eat meat. He wasn't into fitness. He didn't do anything like that. In high school, I was a cheerleader. Roger Williams didn't have cheerleading when I first started, so I got involved in dance. It was similar, dance club, dance team. He hated that. He absolutely hated that. Didn't want me dancing, didn't want me like shaking my ass, showing my ass. So yeah, I still did dance, but it kind of affected how I showed up in dance per se, because, and I'll never forget even having that conversation, but we were even supposed to wear leggings, even for the dance shows. Well, he wasn't cool with me wearing leggings. So there was one year that I like, okay, I'm just going to make up an excuse that I forgot my leggings, and I'm going to wear the black sweatpants so that I won't upset him. And I'm just going to lie to the choreographer that I forgot my leggings at my dorm, and that's why I don't have them. And it was all these just different, really kind of fucked up things that I was doing to try to please him per se. So no, the eating meat was not in terms of anything health-wise. It was strictly because, and I'll never forget, like I can visually see this moment in my mind, like that food on my plate, and him even saying to me, he's like, is something wrong with that? Because like I was literally nervous to eat the fucking chicken, and I'm like, I haven't eaten chicken in this many years. I had a lot of struggles with speaking up about a lot of different things. So I kind of just went along with whatever. And the eating meat was one of them. And it was one of those that and then I was like, okay, well, I guess we did it. So we did it. And yeah, like I changed what I was wearing. I changed a lot. Again, it's not me. I'm not saying this to like point fingers or point the blame, because I made the choice to do so. Right. But it's just one of those that it's like, hindsight's 2020, like if you, like, even if this isn't me, like, and even if it's not meat, like, whatever the food is, if there's some food you don't eat and there's somebody in your life you're not comfortable enough telling them you don't eat, whatever the hell it is, like, why are you not comfortable telling them this? Like,
I could see that.
That's a red flag for somebody in your, if you don't have the level of comfort just to tell them this, like, you're not telling them they can't eat whatever, you know what I'm saying?
And something about, like, even that, like, eating food is something that it's a basic necessity, and why you'd have to change yourself to do that. Like, obviously, like you said, hindsight's 2020, and, everyone's a little, we'll say, silly when we're young. So, especially young and in love, people do strange things. But did that change when you got out of the relationship? Because I know now I make fun of you all the time for only eating chicken and rice. But, like, when did you start being like, okay, like, this diet is actually something that I can change and I can make work for me?
not for a while, because I was in that relationship for 5 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
We broke up at one point during it for about 2 months, but it was still outside of like 60 days, 5 years of my life, which is a long time. So basically all of college. We started dating January of my freshman year of college. So like I had from like end of August up until the start of January. So like first semester, basically I had single, but the rest of it, we were together.
Mm-hmm.
So my food, nutrition, health, any and all of that did not start to change until it was actually pretty close to the end of our relationship. It was October of 2019. We broke up November of 2019. And honestly, I'll never forget. I had walked up 3 flights of stairs and I was out of breath, carrying nothing in my hands. I told this story a few times, and it was kind of like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, I have nothing in my hands and I can't even fucking breathe walking up the stairs. Like something is wrong here. And shortly around that time, I had heard about Rachel Hollis and something she calls the last 90 days. And one of the things that she recommends doing in the last 90 days is moving your body for 30 minutes every single day. And I was like, I can do that. I can move my body for 30 minutes every single day. Regardless of what it is, there's some way you can do it. Even if you're bedridden, you could move your arms. So I'm like, okay, I haven't been to the gym since fucking freshman year of college. By now it's 2019. That's been 4 years since I've been to a gym. I'm going to start walking. Okay. This boyfriend of mine at the time, I'm trying to convince him to even go on 30-minute walks with me. Never will. Okay, whatever. I started doing these 30-minute walks. I don't notice a huge difference of anything. I felt a little less out of breath. Okay. Fast forward, I actually got an email from Anytime Fitness about, hey, come back and reactivate your membership. Well, reactivate your membership because I always had like this interest in fitness, even though I didn't pursue it while I was with this guy. Some like church fair thing, and I entered to win like this Anytime Fitness membership, and I won it. I won a 6-month Anytime membership for a pretty good price because it was this old church thing, and you have all these old people, and nobody bid on it. I was the only bidder, so I won. Well, I never went. I won a 6-month membership, and I didn't go one time.
Use it? Oh, no.
No. Well, then, because of this fucking he wasn't into that. So we were together 24/7. I started doing, if he didn't do it, I didn't really do it. The only thing I did that he didn't do was dance. I get my 3 hours a week, and that's pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't doing it. Fast forward, I get this email after I won the membership. I didn't go one time. October 2019 rolls around. It's like a year later. They're like, we haven't seen you in a while. I'm saying, you never saw me. But okay, tell me this is automated. And they're like, you can come back for 2 free weeks. Like, get a free fob. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give this 2 weeks. If I don't go, I'm not out any money. I already fucking wasted $80 on a 6-month membership I didn't use. This is free for 2 weeks. Let's give it a shot. If I use it, great. I'll pay for the membership. If I don't, no harm, no foul. Okay. I go. They show me a tour. And I see these like group workouts being done. And I was like, that is sick. I want to do that. What is that? And he's like, that's our team HIIT classes. Like, that's separate. I was like, I don't care that's separate. I want to do that. I don't care about this. I want to do that. He's like, okay, we can sign you. They signed me up for that as well. And I fell in love with it. Like, I fell in love with the community to the point where I fell in love with the community because I was also getting away from my toxic living situation, which is a whole nother situation as well. But the community was a big aspect for me because I didn't feel like I was working out. It was friends I was spending time with. I was meeting people. They were friendly. They were nice. Like, I was enjoying my time. Everybody was so welcoming. Everybody was so friendly. And, even though I was overweight then, I didn't ever feel out of place. Nobody looked down on me for that. Everybody's got that gym intimidation a little bit, especially like when you're first starting. And I didn't feel any of that just based on how these people talked to me. And I was like, wow, I fucking love this.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped. I was going all the time. And, I also wanted to be home less, ironically, and that's shocker. But the boyfriend doesn't agree that I'm doing this. Then I'm wearing leggings to the gym. All the comments, of course, you're wearing leggings for all these guys to see you. And honestly, it was even more motivation, not for me to even look better, but for me to get out of the house. So there were days I was at the gym for 3 hours. And like even the trainer would say to me, Amanda, you can't be here this long. And I'm thinking, you don't realize like what I go home to.
Right.
Like,
It's like you're not at that point, you're using it as like your escape or your relief from what's happening at home.
there were days I was eating chicken and rice in the gym, fucking sitting on the bench in the gym, like eating my chicken, using their microwave. Like, I don't want to go home for lunch, so I'm going to sit here for lunch. It's not going to buy lunch. I'm just going to eat my lunch in the gym. I did that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it was just one of those that like, I didn't want to be home. You know, it helped me. One was community, support system, community. Even if I wasn't talking per se about my negative living situation, I was getting away from it, you know, and I was getting my mind off it by doing some type of movement. In terms of food, nutrition, I didn't start changing that right away, mainly because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do all of it. I also knew I had never really embodied this type of identity. So, like, okay, I went to the gym for like 8 months in high school and only did cardio. I've never been a gym person. I can't just wake up one day and now I'm a gym rat. Now I go to the gym 5 days a week and I meal prep. Oh, what? Maybe you could have that switch, but it's not going to last. You know, like I had a trainer say to me, you're not going to lose any weight if you don't change it. And I'm like, listen, I'll talk to you in 3 months. Like, and I still lost 32 pounds in 3 months. Granted, I was some days working out 2 hours a day, but like was still able to see progress. So it's like, it's not like that's the big thing I try to emphasize to people is whatever you can confidently do and be successful in, that's what you should start with. Because people will always say to me, oh, should I start with fitness or should I start with nutrition? What can you confidently, successfully do?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you start with.
Yeah. And like what you can stay consistent with, I think, is a big one too.
Yeah.
Well, you've kept that up now since 2019, pretty much. Yeah. Like it's been, you've been pretty consistent with it. So.
Yeah, it's changed. Like routine has changed. Like I don't do the group HIIT classes like I used to. My routine's changed. I've got a one-on-one fitness coach now, Lexa, love her. But yes, I still do it. But yeah, it's developed. It's changed a little bit.
Nice. Kind of springboarding off of that. Are there anything that you've had in general, past relationships? Like this was a lesson that you learned from, I believe. Anything in your past relationship?
Well,
like,
they believe you don't know that I learned from this. I obviously learned from this. You should know by now. It has been 4 years, and you have been very close to me in the past 4 years. You don't know that I've learned? Brandon, you should be the number one witness that I have learned.
This was a setup for my next question, and you just blew it out the water. What I was going to ask was with your general...
I'm not sorry.
I know, the hat's on point tonight. So with like the past relationships and, all of that, like obviously young and dumb to now, like we've all been there. Like if you had to pick, is there one or two lessons that you would give younger you now that you've experienced all of that? Not necessarily like, oh, don't go out with this guy, but any actual, anything you wish you could go back and say, hey, maybe don't do this, or not don't do this, but maybe think about this kind of thing. If that makes sense, if I worded that correctly. Piece of advice for younger you from relationship status.
It's interesting to me that you said don't go out with this guy because that toxic relationship I was referring to, I had people tell me don't go out with this guy. So can't say I would have listened to that, but
well, that's kind of like also my mind why I worded it that way is because like obviously, you know, like I said, young and dumb, we do crazy things for love. And like at one point, like, okay, it's a toxic relationship and whatever, but now that you're out of it, you can step back and be like, this helps you in the future, you know, not get yourself into that or learn from that experience. So like, that's why I'm curious if there's one thing that you could say that you're like, okay, I think that if I would have known this sooner, or like what to look for versus not to look for, like piece of advice for it from like everything combined, I guess.
Just pay attention to the signs, like the signs, the patterns, you know, that same toxic relationship. I feel like I sound like I'm just shitting on this man, which is not my intention at all. I honestly don't have any bad feelings towards him, but pay attention to the signs. Like he had cheated on me, but early on in our relationship, the same woman he years later cheated on me by having sex with her, he accidentally kissed very early on in the relationship. So it's like, pay attention to the signs, the things, and don't make excuses for other people's behaviors. If you feel like something is an excuse, it probably is. And I'd also just say, you know, everybody's different. Every single person in the world is different. And what I'm not okay with versus what I am okay with is different for every single other person, and I'm not referring to the cheating. But for so long, I tried to convince myself that, oh, it's XYZ is no big deal. Well, if it's a big deal to me, it is a big deal, and I'm not referring to the cheating. Well, if it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal to you. Don't and it's not saying that person is a bad person. They just might not be the person for you, whatever it is.
Yeah. So you're almost taking trying to take a step back from being such almost like a people pleaser, like putting other people's feelings and like.
Yes, I have worked away from being a people pleaser.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you'll put more thought into people's actions and how they feel versus what they give you, if that makes sense. I guess the long of it would be making sure that if you're putting in as much effort as you can and they're putting in as much effort as they can, you should be able to see at least middle ground or go after people who have the same beliefs or wants as you.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, this kind of ties into that one. What are you trying to see for yourself in the future on that relationship aspect?
I have no idea.
It's fair. That's fair.
I know how to look out for the red flags now.
Are there so now that you've had the experience with these kind of relationships, like you're more aware of these red flags or what you consider as red flags that you can try to avoid now? Is I guess you feel like that's confident that you can do that. And you're not going to basically learning from the past experiences.
What are you referring to by those kinds of relationships?
Well, there's been quite a few that me and you have talked in depth at 2-hour phone calls about some relationships. So that's why I'm just curious. Because hell, shit happens. You get in a shit relationship sometimes.
Okay. I'm just listening.
But you're not supposed to be listening. You're supposed to be talking.
Ask me a question. So what are you referring to by those kinds of relationships?
Like toxic relationships. Specifically, this one you said he was not happy with how you were going to do things you liked, like the gym, like dancing, like the way you dress and whatever. So learning from that, I guess, going into another relationship where you might learn that, and the person might not be specifically looking at those things, but also still trying to, I don't want to say control what you're doing, but also maybe you're putting more effort into that's not how I want to say it. you putting in a lot of effort into the person you're with compared to like how much they're putting in towards the relationship, I guess, is kind of what I was trying to come into, like going from a people pleasing to like getting into a relationship where, you know, it's actually a spot where you both are putting in the effort to build something, I guess. And it's not just like a one-sided relationship.
Are you saying that my relationships have been?
Sometimes, yeah.
Fucking Brandon.
I have this written that you wanted to bring up, and you'll have to you're going to hate me for this. You're going to have to remind me what we were talking about. So what we were talking about is at some point we were having a conversation, and from what I remember of it, it was like something had happened and you were trying to tell me that, like, you know, from everything you saw on your side of the conversation, you couldn't understand why this person over here wasn't seeing things the same way as you. That's like bare bones of how that conversation started. And all I remember, I think it was a FaceTime, and all I remember is I was trying to just explain visually how perception and your point of view versus other point of view. And that's when I took the pencil and I put it to the screen. And this is pretty much probably the exact photo. And I said, okay, so like from your view, you're seeing just like the tip of the pencil and a little bit, but
No, you asked me, what do you see?
yeah. And then
I see a pointy pencil.
Yeah.
And
then I did something like, from there, you can't see the rest of it. You couldn't see my perspective, which was the eraser bit of it. And so it was just one of those things that we did that was just trying to show that if you're only looking from something at one direction, you would never know how big of a pencil or if there's any designs or what color it is just from looking at the tip there. I think that got the point across well enough to where you have a picture of it still.
yeah, look at this. Can you see this?
Yeah, that's funny.
I see it pretty regularly. This is one side of the pencil.
I don't remember what that conversation was about, but it was something.
Neither
I think
do
it
I.
was
But
an
I love it.
argument with some.
I was arguing with someone, and I was like, "This fucking fucker," and you're like, "Miss, look at the pencil. What do you see?" And I was like, "Brandon, I don't want to look at the pencil."
Yeah, that's actually, that checks out.
Like, it's a sharp pencil. I don't want to look at the sharp pencil. And it was, I don't see a sharp pencil. And I was like, Brandon, what are you saying? Yes. It's so true, though, because, like, in so many areas of life, we don't necessarily see all sides of everything, you know? And it's like, what are you judging something off of? And you only know about A and B. You don't know about C, D, E.
Yep. And if you're not willing to take that step back and maybe even change or tweak your perspective, that's all you're going to know.
Facts. That's why you need somebody like Brandon to be like, hey, look at this pencil.
Let's see what else we got here.
Brandon, don't read it off a paper.
Tell me what to do. How about this one? Is there anything, you talk about like shifting mindsets and like some of the struggles that you went through throughout your life. Is there anything that you have done or a shift that you've made or changed that you haven't been able to talk about that you might want to? Like, is there a specific thing that you could think of, be like, wow, you know, I haven't had the opportunity to bring this up or to talk about this? Or do you think, or on here, have you had enough exposure to where like most of the shifts that you're like the big shifts you can talk about, but is there anything smaller that you could say like, oh, okay, like this is something that I've not talked about, but it'd be kind of neat to?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, that is a question. That's how this works.
Wait, you actually want me to tell you?
I mean, you don't have to. Like, that was a question. Is there something that you've not been able to talk about because the time hasn't come up or given you an opportunity to that you want to? Like in general. Do you want to talk about it now, or are you just going to leave it at a yes/no question? Like the idea was giving you the opportunity to talk about the thing that you wanted to talk about, not just a, yep. Fucking killing me, Smalls. You're fucking killing me.
You gotta get better at asking questions, Brandon. We gotta practice. We're gonna do this once a week.
No, we're not.
We are. Yes, we are. I'm just gonna call you once a week and I'm gonna start recording. I'm gonna be like, Brandon, welcome to Manders Mindset, where we explore the power of shifting your mindset, and I'm gonna shift yours. Okay.
That was a good question, but
No, it is a good question.
it's cool.
No, so a little bit back in terms of that relationship that I was in, I made the choice to do everything that I did and to not do everything that I didn't do. But looking back on it, I feel like I missed out on a lot of things throughout that relationship. Granted, it was choices I made, but even one of them being I never studied abroad in college because he didn't want me to be gone from him for that long. I went to New Orleans in 2019 for spring break for some criminal justice class, got 1 credit for it, and it was like World War III had started for the fact that I went to New Orleans without my boyfriend. It was this whole, he was messaging other women about how I went on a trip and I didn't take him, to the point where I had women messaging me, bitching at me about the fact that I did that to my boyfriend. And, that is one of the things that kind of really made me really start showing up differently, even in terms of the traveling, in terms of the going to conferences, experiencing life, whatever, because of the fact of feeling like I missed out on shit in the past, and feeling like even the things I didn't miss out on, they weren't the best experiences. Like, I'll give you an example. In college, I worked in admissions and I was like the head tour guide. So I had all the admission staff in my contacts, all the student staff. So if anybody was late for a tour or didn't show up, I was the one to contact them. No, I didn't have everybody in my contacts first and last name. I had a blue and yellow heart because it just signaled to my mind, oh, I know them from Roger Williams. If I need to contact Alyssa quickly because she's not here for her tour, oh, Alyssa with the blue and yellow heart. I'll never forget one of the handful of times this man hung out with me and some of my girlfriends. We were walking to a party on campus, and I'll never forget, he saw my phone and he saw that like different contact names had a blue and yellow heart. And it was the biggest argument ever. And some of my girlfriends were with me and they were like, Amanda, what the fuck? And I was like, listen, this is what I deal with. Like, this is why people don't see me often. This is why people don't see the two of us often, because it's almost like we can't be places together. And, post that, it really shifted a lot for me. And I was like, you know what? One, I'm not going to let a person, I'm not going to let a job, I'm not going to let a circumstance, I'm not going to let anything stop me from doing what I want to do. And breathwork was the first time I ever did any type of traveling alone. Got on a plane for the first time by myself. Opened my eyes to a lot. I still had nerves, though, around traveling post this. But, and now you remember this. I haven't shared this, but I'm going to get into it.
No, I don't, but I'm interested.
So, I met a man online. He lived kind of far away from me. He wanted me to go travel and see him. So I did. Went there for a weekend, came back. It was shortly after this that I lost my job. Things started to unravel. And he came to visit me. And then he was like, yo, let's just pick up. Let's go. And I packed my car. I loaded up my car and I went and I drove 20 hours with this man to another state. And I was there for 2 months. And, again, it was one of those things, I'm not going to let something stop me, per se. But also even I've always, this incident was a really big eye-opener for me, because when shit unraveled and I was ready to get out of Dodge pretty quickly, you probably remember this. I ran into car issues. And of course, my car was not safe to drive back. So it was one of those like, do I leave my car and fly home? Do I risk driving home even though it's not really safe to? I literally felt like I was stranded. I was stuck in this different state with a man I didn't want to be with, a car that I couldn't drive. And I actually re-saw the video and I'll never forget it. But like I post on my Snapchat and I'm very raw and authentic on there because I got a solid like 4 or 5 Snapchat friends. It's like my vlog for me and my best friends. But I posted a video on there walking around, bawling my eyes out because I was like, yo, you got to be careful about being spontaneous because sometimes it backfires. And I'll never forget, this man literally said to me, well, I guess you're stuck here with me. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? But because of some of my favorite people in the world, Brandon being one of them, I'm not fucking stuck anywhere. Literally, yeah, you laughing. It's fucking true. You know, and you sent me a message and you're like, Miss, what's the problem? Why are you stuck in Florida? You're not stuck in Florida. And you even offered to come and get my ass with Justin. I remember this. I got the messages telling me that you would come and get me in Florida and bring me home. That same day, I got a text message from my best friend, Kat, who I've got the matching tattoos with. And she's like, I really don't want to take a road trip to Florida and I can't do it today because I've got a meeting, but I can get you on Friday. And I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't even talked to you. And I'm getting all these messages of all these people that are like, Amanda, we're going to come get you. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to come get me? I didn't even send a message. And that was a big shift for me. I was like, damn, even if I get myself fucking, no matter what happens, I've got people in my life who are going to help me. Even that fucking man said to me, he's like, I'm surprised we've got so many people that are willing to help you. That's right, I do. I fucking do. You think I'm stuck with your fucking ass? I ain't stuck with your fucking ass. Brandon's gonna get me. I ain't stuck nowhere. Yes. Yes. Tell me I'm wrong. I ain't wrong.
No, that for sure happened.
It was a big shift for me because, you know, it was the first time in my life that I felt like I was physically stuck somewhere. And then it was like, no, you're fucking not. Fuck you, buddy. You think you're gonna... And then him telling me I was, and I was like, yo, Brandon's gonna come get my ass. I ain't fucking stuck here. And I said that too. I said, Brandon will get me before I'm stuck here with you.
Happens to the best of us.
But, you know, I had a woman on the podcast talk to me about how she's made decisions in her life. Well, she was talking about in terms of like family, but because she hasn't really had that family safety net. And it was kind of that Florida incident for me that I was like, I do have that safety net. You know, if push comes to shove, like even outside of my family, like my father's a piece of shit. That's a whole nother fucking story. But, you know, even without me saying a word, I had 3 people willing to fucking come, drive 20 hours and get my ass because I was sick of this fucking crazy ass man that I didn't want to be staying in his apartment anymore. That, it gave me like this, I have people who got me if I fuck up. So I can do crazy shit because I'm going to be good.
That's one way. One takeaway from the story, that's for sure. And then see who come help.
Shut up. I know people will help. Brandon will help me. This fucker thinks he's going to tell me you're stuck with me. Nuh-uh, Brandon's going to get my ass. We'll fight. I'll fight.
Hell yeah.
Brandon will get me. Think you're going to tell me I'm stuck? I ain't stuck nowhere. Because if I don't want to be somewhere, Brandon's not going to make me be there. Yeah. Brandon's you're going to help me not have to be anywhere I don't want to be.
Sure.
Yeah. I have that belief. I have that mindset. If I'm somewhere I don't want to be, Brandon will get me out of there. That's my mindset.
No, Lord. That's an interesting takeaway from that. Not like, oh, let's not put myself in weird spots like that. It's like, oh, I got a safety net to get me out of situations. Which, hell, you do.
Some.
It's a lot harder if you go off of these far off trips to what, Bali you went to. I think there was somewhere else too, right?
I only left the country once.
Yeah.
The other times were in state. So it's like this not a big deal.
Yeah. It is always funny when you get a text message and you're like, How close are you to Utah? Like, fuck, I don't know. 12 hours. Why? Oh, I'm going to be in Utah tomorrow. It's like,
I do that all the time. My sense of geography is like the worst thing in the world. Do you realize I drove all the way to Washington, D.C. because I thought it was going to take me like 5 or 6 hours, but it took me 11.
yeah, that sounds about all right.
It took 11.
Don't you have like a GPS so you could just,
Well, I
or
GPS
did
it
you,
and
just, did you just get in the car and be like, oh, hell, we can do this?
I looked it up once one day and it said it was like 6.5. And then the day I went to go do it, it took me so much longer. There was this rainstorm. People were not moving. And yeah, it took me 11 hours. 11 hours. But I do send you texts like that a lot. Hey, are you near this?
I know.
And then even when people are like, hey, do you want to do this in whatever state? I'm like, before I make a decision, Brandon, is this near you?
It never is. That's okay, though. With this, now that you've traveled outside of the country, are you looking to do more of it, or you got plans for more of that, or are you just kind of like playing it by ear?
I want to do more of it. I loved it.
Is there anywhere specific that you want to go?
Everywhere.
Real specific. I like it.
I'm going back to Bali for sure. I want to go to Italy. I don't know. I'd love to go to some like Costa Rica or something tropical, even if it's not Costa Rica, something like that. I did Jamaica in high school, but I was a junior in high school, so like very different.
Yeah. I think we talked about that last time, a little bit at least. But no solid plans for the future yet, just playing it by ear. More of the jump on a plane in like, I don't know, a day or two and show up somewheres. Any other plans for more of these trainings for breath work that you're interested in looking into, or more like that kind of stuff?
I'm planning on going for a month-long training for sound healing.
Okay.
You heard it here. What else you got for me?
I mean, that's pretty much all the topics that I have come up with.
Brandon.
Miss, we're an hour and 17 minutes in, and you gave me 3 days in which I had to do shit for 2 of them. Like, I'm doing my best.
I'm not sorry. I'm just a guest. I'm Brandon's mindset.
Yeah, this is wild. Clearly, I'm nailing this. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast with these little 5 questions from Jay Shetty from his podcast On Purpose. These 5 with one word, if you could, for me. What is one word someone who's meeting you for the first time would describe you as?
Short.
What is one word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you?
Adventurous.
Yeah, I agree with that one. What is one word you'd use to describe yourself?
You'd think I would have known these a little better, but
You knew these were coming too. That's the funny part.
crazy.
What is the one word that if someone who didn't like you or agree with you or your mindset would use to describe you?
Annoying.
And last one for these one words are, what is one word that you're trying to embody right now?
Present.
I like that. And then we're going to have the final 5. So these are answered with just a sentence. What is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
I've heard a lot of good advice over the years, but I'd probably go with the best being something my grandma told me years and years ago. But if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. You know, it was one of those that like I've talked quite a bit on and off on my podcast, on different podcasts, about how I was bullied on and off over the years. And it's one of those things that even as a kid, I never fully understood why other people cared if I was fat. Like, what difference does it fucking make to you if I am overweight or if my voice sounds weird? So it's just one of those things. If you don't have anything nice to say, if you've got a judgment about somebody, write it down. Don't say it to them. I pride myself and I think I'm very non-judgmental, but we all have some judgments, but you don't have to say it to that person. Something else she had said to me along the lines with that same conversation was, and I was young at the time, so I didn't even fully understand what this meant, but she was like, something that takes you, I can't remember if she said 5 seconds or 5 minutes, but something that takes you 5 minutes to say might last in somebody's head for 5 years. And I was young and I was like, what does that even mean? And she's like, well, even if it's a really good thing or if it's a really bad thing, if somebody says to you, really positive or really negative, it's going to stick with you. And you don't have to be an asshole to people for no reason. So if you don't have anything nice to say, shut the fuck up.
On the opposite note, what's the worst advice you ever heard or received? Heard or received?
And so this is the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why it came to mind, but I'll say it anyways. I early on at times ran into even different issues with different softwares I used to record the podcast, Riverside being one of them. Hated them. Anyways, I ran into different issues at times, or even times I was cut out, and somebody had said to me, because I was telling them, oh, I'm going to ask this guest to re-record the podcast episode with me because we can't hear what's being said, and I'm not going to publish a shitty episode just to say I published the episode. If I can't edit it in a way that you can understand it, if that's due to technical difficulties, the mic cutting out, whatever, I'm not going to publish it. But I had somebody say to me, you can't ask a guest to re-record. And I'm like, yeah, I can. Because I'm not publishing this episode. And they were like, we shouldn't. That's unprofessional. Well, it's also unprofessional to publish a crappy sounding podcast.
That's not great. Well, what is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
There's a lot of things that I used to value that I no longer value. But first thing that came to mind was Michael Kors poses. I used to be super into, I really was in high school. It was like a badge of honor for me to have a nice Michael Kors bag. And I still have some now, but I don't even use a purse. I use a wristlet every day. And my main purse is a bag that says Manders Mindset. So lots changed.
Yeah, I'd say so. If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be, if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
I'd wanted to say something along the lines, Amanda did everything she could to make people feel seen, valued, and heard when they were around her. And she was genuine and authentic to everybody. And just that I tried to make everybody feel like they mattered. It's honestly one of my biggest missions in life, is to make people feel like they have some sort of value, because I feel like everybody does. And I dealt with a lot of lack of self-worth myself for a lot of my life. So I don't want anybody to deal with that.
And lastly, if you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would be and why?
I have thought so hard on this question for over a year, and I've not known what I would say for this, and I still don't. But we're going to go with, that's the tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's so hard. And I think deeper about this question, too, with my paralegal background, because I read into it more so in terms of the law and how would you legislate it. And
Taking the logistics of the actual instead of the hypothetical.
I would say, and then of course I second guess myself a little bit, because part of me wants to tie it into honesty, but at the same time, if honesty makes you a douche and then you're going to be saying something that's not nice, that's not the law. So it's not to be fully honest, because if you're being honest, it might mean you're being a douche. And my best piece of advice is that if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't fucking say it. So, part of me wants to say something along the lines of be a good person, but that's not a fucking law. And how do you prove good versus bad? But So that's a whole conversation. I could go down that rabbit hole, but I will spare you the time. But this is so hard.
Mm-hmm. And thank you. Just spring it on people at the end of these episodes.
I warn them that they can listen. I have an ending segment. Nobody does.
You didn't warn me. You're just like, hey, surprise.
You should have listened to an episode. It's not my fault. That's actually yours. Let's just go with the law is, I guess I'm going to tie it back into the not saying anything, that you can't say anything hurtful for no purpose. Like, it's like we all have our frustrations when things happen, but saying things in kids and teens come to my mind pretty prevalently. There's no reason to. So I guess I would say the law would be something along the lines of, like, it's against the law to say hurtful things to people for no reason. How I would enforce that, I don't officially know.
Yeah, but that's not the point of this question.
And I'd say why, because, again, it comes back to you don't know how long something you say to someone will last in their head, whether it is the nicest comment or the rudest comment. You don't know. And, I remember things that were said to me, some of the best things and some of the worst things from many years ago. So, like, even think about things that have been said to you in your life, like anybody listening to me, whether it's positive things or negative things. There's certain things you remember. And I'm sure there's things you remember from years ago. So keep that in mind. Again, I think journaling is a great, you want to be a dick, journal it out. Journal your judgment. That's my advice. Journal your judgment. I like that. That's going to be a little slogan.
Heck yeah.
Journal your judgment. I'm going to say that. I'm going to write that down. Journal your judgment, Brandon.
We'll see. Well, any final thoughts, feelings for the listeners?
How was it hosting your first podcast?
Horrifying.
And now it's something you can say you've done. Brandon helps me with everything.
I wouldn't say everything, but
I would.
there's a list for sure, but it's not everything.
It's pretty close. With myself stuck in another state, Brandon, you're not stuck. I'll never forget that. Yo, this fucking asswipe says to me, and I was like, Brandon told me I am not stuck here with you. Brandon fucking said that.
Yeah, I think that was just get the guy mad, but that's fine.
Brandon, no, it wasn't. It was the fact that I have people that will save me if push comes to shove.
I don't know if I wouldn't say it's saving, but it would be certainly helping. You know what I mean? Like, saving would be like something totally out of your control, right? At the end of the day, I think this kind of leads into I think this is where this came from, was the you have three options, I guess I told you one time. So I think it was probably this situation that we talked about that I'm thinking back to it now, which was, I guess I had said something along the lines of, when you were in a panic there, you got three options. You can bitch about it, you can find a solution, or you can do a little bit of both. And realistically, that's what you ended up doing. Like, you would have you did find your way out of there. But, like, if shit had to happen, you have plenty of people in your life. And this goes back to having the connections with people. You had 3 or 4 people reach out to you and say, hell, let's get you out of there. Like, I don't think that's saving, is what I'm trying to say. It's for sure helping, but I don't by any means think it was as drastic, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. And I was actually referring to something else. You know how you told me there's 3 sides to every story?
Oh, yeah, yours, mine, you, and the truth.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's another piece of Brandon wisdom for y'all. I love how you mentioned that to me about you can bitch about it, you can figure out how to problem solve it, or you can do a little bit of both. That's with everything.
I think I was like real strict about it too. It's like, those are your 3 options. There are
I'm
no other.
bawling my eyes out, and with the straightest face, you go, Miss, you've got 3 options. You can bitch about this, you could figure it out, or you could do some of both. So what are you gonna do? And I was like, right. And I was bawling.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes, but I felt better afterwards.
Yeah,
It was
sometimes you need a little bit of tough love. Like, it is what it is.
Brandon. You think that's with everything, that you can either bitch, you can solve the problem, or you can do both?
Yeah. Pretty much like picking your battles, right? You can, like with a problem, you can bitch about the problem and just vent about it. You can solve the problem, or the more likely option is you're going to do a little bit of both.
You think it's healthy to do both?
Yeah, you have to vent. You have to bitch about it.
Why do you say you have to?
It's easier to get shit off your chest that way, in my experience. Like, you just, what's the, there's a couple of quotes that I can't exactly remember word for word right now, but it's basically the same idea of like, you can bitch, you can cry, you can complain, you can do it, but as long as you're moving forward or working towards a solution, it's justified.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. A friend of mine mentions about, like, you got 20 minutes, whatever whether it's a positive, great thing you're celebrating, or it's something you're bitching about, you got 20 minutes to do it. Set the timer, do whatever you got to do, and then you move forward.
Mm-hmm. That's not a bad idea.
You know, so like you feel it, even if it's a good thing, but you don't ruminate on either the positive or the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. I loved this.
Mm-hmm.
This was a blast. We're going to do this every week, guys. Stay tuned. Any other final words, Mr. Brandon?
Hell, I had a blast. It was certainly something that I wasn't expecting. It was fun, though. It was an experience, and I'm glad that you invited me on to question you relentlessly for the last hour and a half.
This has been fun. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
You bet.
And thank you guys for tuning in to this special episode of Manders Mindset. I really appreciate it, and so does Brandon. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.